Well, let's discuss this further with Ambassador Jerry Matthews Matjila, who is a former United Nations permanent representative of the Republic of South Africa to the United Nations. We begin, Prof. Ambassador, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Perhaps to begin the conversation here around the question around multilateralism. The world has a reckoning at the moment where it has to ask itself, do multilateral bodies and institutions still bear the influence and effect that they have been designed for? And does multilateral politics still hold true? That is to say, do nation states that engage in a multilateral body trust each other and adhere to each other's principles? We've seen that to not always be the case at the United Nations. And as these heads of states gather now, they have to reckon with that question. Do you think that they'll find consensus around the principle of multilateralism?
Oliver, thanks for inviting me and to our viewers. On the issue of race of multilateralism, the fact that the leaders have converged today in New York from 23 to 28 to take stock of the global situation, address the ongoing challenges, and provides a solution, it does indicate that everybody still believes there is a need for us to invest on multilateral system. There is no other option. That's the only way we can keep working together. There's only way we can live to the founding principles of the Charter of the United Nations. There's only way we can deal with the three pillars of UN: peace and security, sustainable development, and human rights. There is no other mechanism or institution that can help all of us to deal with these issues. We also need multilateralism because you remember, this arises like as the UN as the apex of multilateral system. It was formed because of the scourge of Second World War. So everybody still recalls the devastation of the Second World War, and therefore have invested since 26 June 1945, when the Charter was united, to create all these systems and platforms and organs to make sure that we can all live together in peace and security. So we still need multilateral system.
Yeah, but how do we go from it being beyond an exercise of academic debate between heads of states to it being actionable in ways that has lasting impact? On the margins of the screen right now, we're broadcasting a takeaway from the two-state conference currently taking place, being chaired by President Emmanuel Macron of France. But there's absolutely no guarantee that heads of state would be able to walk out of this with an actionable plan on how to bring about a two-state solution. How do we get the buy-in? Because multilateralism is about buy-in on the one hand and trust on the other hand. How do we get the buy-in of nation states participating in multilateralism to be able to begin to engage and effect the agreements that they hold between themselves?
Oliver, that's true. But also remember, all the countries gathered in New York now have signed to the Charter of the United Nations when they joined. And they all say will abide by the founding principles of the UN, of equality of nations, and all of us will work to make sure that we don't burden the future generations with a scourge of war. They all committed that there should be peace and security in the world. Now, having done that, they then created a lot of platform mechanisms to deal with these issues. So they have to be bound. I think this 80th anniversary of the United Nations is a chance for the leaders to reconfirm and take a decision to live by the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. They should walk the talk. The leaders must be found accountable to the principles of the Charter. You can't sign a document and do something different and there is no consequences. I think this gathering, which I call the Palestinian movement, it's an indication that although there might be incremental achievements, there might be small steps towards a particular direction. Ultimately, the world gathers around, coalesce around one issue and say, now we must take this decision. Palestinian question indicates that although it has been 75 years, 1948, they agreed to create a both two-state solution, Palestine and Israel, and they created Israel state. But it took 75 years to then say by the overwhelming majority of United Nations members, 150 plus countries to say, recognize Palestine. I think now, Oliver, we're going to see momentum gaining on other issues that we cannot turn a blank eye when the fundamental principle of the UN are being undermined, when people are not conforming to what we all agreed for equality, human rights, and treating one another with dignity. So I think we're going to see momentum, especially when you see African countries also raising their head, when you see the South raising their head to say, I think it's enough, we have to move in that direction.
Just a last question very quickly. 8 years into it, does the United Nations have to reimagine its world its role in the global order, but more specifically, reimagine its role in the global order in relation to what have been the proliferation over the last 40 or so years of smaller multilateral bodies like BRICS, like the European Union, the African Union, and these organizations and organs that aim to do a duplication of some of the things that the United Nations ought to be achieving?
Well, there is no doubt. I mean, the theme that says better together, 8 years plus for peace, development and human rights, I think for me it indicates that these mini multilateral and plurilateral arrangements, they are okay, but they cannot substitute the United Nations. They cannot substitute the multilateral system as it was conceived many years ago. Of course, the world is changing. We see a lot of changes taking place. There are new actors, there are new power. There is a power distribution around the world. It's no longer unilateral, unipolar. You see a lot of multipolarity. But this is the sense of things changing. Then we need to come together, grab our hands around these changes, and create and enhance a global system of multilateralism, of fairness, equity among nations, among people. We cannot continue with a Western thought multilateral system. We must agree that the world needs to be reimagined, that new issues need to be incorporated, that new players need to be given a role to play, that new cultures, civilizations need to be embraced, that all of us can then build a new multilateral system as we move towards 90 years, 100 years of United Nations. The time has come, it must be done, there is no other alternative, and I believe we are going to craft a new multilateral system in the edges of what is happening now.
Yep. Ambassador Matjila, thank you so much for your time this evening. I really do appreciate it. That is Ambassador Jerry Matjila, who is the former representative of South Africa as a permanent representative to the United Nations.